NORSCA Economy. The Norscans are commonly described as a people with only two talents: producing lethal weapons of war and producing powerful warriors with the deadly will to use them, and as such trade with the various peoples surrounding them, the horse nomads to their east and the mutant bands to their north will commonly center around the exchange of weaponry and armor. For it is for their smelting of metal and working of steel that the Norscans may be acknowledged when off the battlefield. Norscan steel is amongst the finest in all the known world. Their barbaric iron plates capable of turning aside a blade, as well as the armor of any knightly lord of Bretonnia. And there are those smiths of the Norse well versed in the art of creating the vaunted chaos armor. But such knowledge is jealously guarded and rarely attempted, for the creation of such armor involves black rites and sacrifices of the maker's very spirit. Even more so, many superstitious Norsemen outright refrain from the creation of chaos armor despite having the skills to make it, believing their manufacture a matter only for the gods themselves. The Norscans have also kept strong trade channels with the fire dwarfs of the Great Skull Land. Over the centuries, trade delegations from Zarnagarund have made contact with the Norse tribes, with varying degrees of success, however, and have opened up some trade relations with them. The Norscans cannot hope to match the dwarfs in the art of metallurgy, for the work of men is shoddy and exude compared to the mastery of the sons of Grugni and Hashut. Indeed, the Norscans entertain trade relations with the Chaos Dwarves in order to make use of their masterfully crafted weapons and armor, and in some cases, Chaos Dwarves can be found living temporarily amongst Norscan clans in order to facilitate an arrangement. The Norscan tribes thus exchange furs, meat, precious gems, warpstone, chaos-tainted iron ore, and, most importantly for the dwarves, slaves, in order to buy their armaments. Some few Norscan tribes, primarily those in the extreme south of the country, also trade with the Empire in small quantities, though this is comparatively little compared to their commerce with the Kurgan. In times of peace, Northmen can be found selling furs, gems, hunted game, and other such things in the great merchant cities of Erengrad or Marienburg. However, this is often a contemptible position for any Norseman, and few will look upon it as a first resort. Some Norse tribes have also seen fit to sell slaves taken from their many raids to the Dark Elves of the West, particularly the Greylings, who do so in between raiding the Dark Elven cities, such as Clarond Kar. Norse slavers are also seen as far south as Araby and Ind, flooding the flesh markets with premium stock that lesser warriors simply could not attain. Whaling is another industry of NORSCA. Given that the sea creatures of the far north are often as twisted by the touch of the dark gods as any other creature, the whalers of NORSCA are often made of sterner stuff than most, and thus it is that whaling is one of the few professions not directly concerned with battle that is respected even amongst warriors. Whales provide much to a Norse village's food stores, their meat being able to feed entire villages well. Their skin is used to manufacture rope, and their blubber is used to make oil for fuel. The easiest way to hunt them is to use boats to herd schools of small whales ashore where they can be easily killed. But most Norscans spurn such womanly ways, savouring the thrill of setting sail upon a mighty longship to hunt a monstrous whale throughout the Sea of Chaos. Above all, do Norsemen treasure the blood and fury of any endeavour, and whaling is no exception. When such a beast is sighted, the longships sail after it immediately, harpooners gathering at the fore to bring the beast down. The bravest men then leap from the longship's prow onto the Leviathan's back, tearing its hide apart with strikes from their axes. But nonetheless, these beasts, twisted and warped as they are by the powers of chaos, are amongst the most terrifying of creatures within the northern seas, and so it is that any encounter with them must be swiftly and surely settled, for such is their bulk that they can easily capsize any longship, no matter its size, and can swallow entire crews in their gaping maws. Harpooners must thus ensure a swift kill. The best are able to impale the beast right in its gargantuan heart, while others of lesser skill instead skewer it in its ribcage, enabling them to instead drag the beast towards the longship where the crew can slay it with their axes. A whaling vessel seldom returns without towing a slaughtered whale behind it, as it is considered better amongst whalers to submit to a watery grave than face the dishonor of returning to their villages empty-handed. When a vessel does return with the spoils of victory, any Norse village or town has much to celebrate. Thanks and sacrifices are offered up to the dark gods, and much drinking occurs, lasting well into the week, for the survival of the village is now assured for the next many months. The Norscans have little use for coins, preferring instead barter and simple taking what they wish on their raids, including coins of other races and kingdoms. But what few coins they do mint are called skeatas, small silver coins bearing the crude imagery of a tribal king encircled by runes of the Dark Tongue. The pfennig is a bronze coin whose face is divided into 4 quadrants. Each quadrant bears a rune, starting with strength in the top left quadrant, then clockwise the other quadrants are courage, death, and conquest. The Northmen do not mint gold coins. Whatever gold they find, they instead melt down into jewelry. They do not exchange coins with other nations, Firstly, due to few southern traders hazarding transactions with those who so openly serve chaos, and also because the Norsemen see all coinage as equal, regardless of composition. Norskans, martially inclined as they are, have a practice of wearing arm rings, forged from gold, silver, and in some cases, beaten iron, as a sign of the victories a warrior has won, thus serving as status symbols, as these arm rings are worn by warrior and jarl alike. These arm rings also serve as currency in addition to their aforementioned functions. The arm rings themselves are far more ubiquitous amongst the Norskans than coinage. Norscan language. Norscan is a complex and ancient tongue. Structurally, it bears much similarity with Khazalid, the harsh, guttural tongue of the dwarves, but it is also deeply influenced by the dark tongue, and to a lesser extent, Old Reichspiel. Essentially, Norscan uses a small number of root words and creates new words by adding prefixes and suffixes and creating compound words out of simple ones. What further adds to its complexity is that different tribes often use different words to describe the same things. Hence, the dialects of Norscan vary wildly, often making the clans different nations unto themselves. For instance, a southerly tribe may refer to a bear as a bee-wolf, bee for honey, wolf for shape and appetite, while a northerly tribe, where bees simply do not exist, may refer to a bear as a water wolf, since the bear snatches fish from the mountain streams. In order to master this language, one must not only have complete mastery over its root words, but also be able to understand the implied meaning when the words are joined in the context of where they are spoken. As the Norsemen have invaded and conquered the empire in the past, their tongue has come to influence those of the empire, particularly in the northerly provinces most susceptible to their attacks, such as Nordland and Ostland. For instance, the term were-creature, used to describe shape-changing beings, is obviously drawn from the Norse word for those who are affected irrevocably by the corrupting influence of chaos, namely chaos spawn and forsaken, the were. The Norse have no word for mutant in their tongues, the closest equivalents for the condition being blessed, gifted, or chosen. The latter being perhaps the closest fit, chosen by the dark powers, gifted by the gods. Titles and nicknames form another important aspect of the Norscan lexicon, and are often bestowed upon a warrior after certain heroic exploits, donating a personal trait or ability. Examples of such are Hate-Wrath, Manslayer, Bloodaxe, Beast Hunter, and so on. Norscan insults, on the other hand, are often crude, demeaning, and appalling to hear, as the Norse venerate all things masculine. Disparaging a man's warrior and sexual prowess is not only humiliating, but also infuriating to hear. To speak of a man's sword is a particularly common jibe, thus impugning both his skill at arms as well as the size of his manhood. comparing a man to faithless Imperials, thus implying disfavor with and disloyalty to the Dark Gods and to the clan and ancestors themselves, is yet another surefire way to provoke a Norseman into a terrible rage. And woe unto those foolish enough to imply that a Norseman was used as a woman in the bed of another man. For to utter such craveness would transform even the lowliest Norseman into a rampaging berserker, certain to cut down dozens in a psychotic fury. The majority of common Norse insults are far too profane to even mention, but suffice to say, most are like the Norse themselves, barbaric, crude, savage, and incredibly unsubtle. Other common Norscan phrases often tend to invoke the dark gods in some way or fashion. For instance, the phrase kargash, meaning blood of corn, is a common enough expression of ire in NORSCA, though it is also used as an oath. The Norse write using runes, and those familiar with the written script of the Dark Tongue can no doubt see its influence upon the written system of NORSCA. The runes are believed by many Norscans to hold some measure of the power of chaos, and are thus often inscribed onto a warrior's armor, including even the plate mail of Chosen, in order to invoke the protection of the gods and grant strength to the wearer in a primitive form of magical invocation.